I now come to basic food items. Madam Speaker, several commentators have suggested that we remove import duties on basic food items to alleviate the problem of rising food prices. However, while it may sound good to those who are unfamiliar with the local and food industry, this would have an immediate and negative impact on the domestic producers of these items. For instance, the removal of import duty on chicken would have a disastrous effect on the local poultry industry. As a result, we are carefully examining the list of the most commonly used basic food items to determine which items can be made exempt from import duty without damaging local manufacturers. An example of a basic food item not made in Trinidad and Tobago, but used as a staple in many households, which falls into this category, is cheddar cheese. However, to provide immediate relief, I propose instead to expand the list of basic food items that are exempted from value-added tax. This will include the zero rating of basic food items such as biscuits, cooking oil, canned vegetables, cornflakes, canned fish, canned meat, curry, juice, sausages, ham, ketchup, bottled water, and pigtail. This measure will take effect from November the 1st, 2021, and an appropriate list of items will be published shortly.
Really? You have got to be kidding me. I'll explain what I mean right after this. Hi, I'm Howard of Trinidad, where it is believed that health and strength is a choice and not up to chance. Therefore, this channel addresses health and fitness topics and gives tips and strategies so that you can make the right choice. Every year, the government of Trinidad and Tobago gives a budget statement giving allocations to the various ministries for the said ministries to be able to fund their day-to-day operations and to fund various projects and undertakings for the supposed development of the country. Of late, I have taken a keen interest in how the government addresses the issue of the health of the population, because in my opinion, how the issue of health is addressed in the budget gives me an idea of how the issue of health is viewed in the general population. And the perspective that I get never fails to disappoint me. Yeah, and this year was no different. When discussing the issue of health, Mr. Carl Imbert, the Minister of Finance at the time of this recording, his budget statement was addressed using the overall theme of the COVID-19 pandemic and the resulting challenges that the country faced and is facing. However, when addressing the issue of health, this is how we started off.
The COVID-19 pandemic has exposed cracks in our health system. It has also demonstrated how much an efficient health sector means for our economies. We were hit hard by the dual health and economic shocks, and both have had a chronic impact on our economic activity with substantial lost productivity.
No problems there. What the COVID-19 pandemic has shown is that no economy can operate if the people in the economy are sick and dying. So I also agree when he says this.
Madam Speaker, prevention is better than cure.
No doubt about that. But it is from here that things start to go off track.
We have been investing in better health outcomes as a key for building resilience and creating healthier, working-age people through our healthcare delivery system.
Now, don't get me wrong. Healthcare has its place, and it's very important. However, what the Minister of Finance just focused on was the improvement of the healthcare facilities and delivery, and using the idea of a reformed healthcare system as a driver for economic diversification. There isn't much, if anything, about prevention in that. Because healthcare is about caring for people who are sick and hopefully nurse them back to health. Hopefully being the key word. In my opinion, there aren't any initiatives, policies, or proposals presented in the budget to incentivize the population to prevent getting sick in the first place and ending up dependent on that health care. All the minister talked about in the budget statement was the improvement and the provision of infrastructure and systems to manage disease. Nothing about prevention, even though out of his own mouth.
Madam Speaker, prevention is better than cure.
And what is the most pressing health concern in Trinidad and Tobago right at this moment? I'll give you a hint. It's not COVID-19.
We'd like to know, can one now say that since May that COVID is the number one killer or number one cause of death in Trinidad and Tobago, just how we would have traditionally said, say, cardiovascular illness or diabetes?
So thank you for that question. The short answer to the question, of course, is no. The number one killer has not actually changed with respect to NCDs, cardiovascular disease, etc., being responsible for the majority of the deaths that occurred on a given time frame. It has manifested itself as an acute change in the causes of death, and that in and of itself makes it important. But no, it does not fall into the number one spot by any stretch of the imagination, neither locally nor globally.
As Dr. Hines said, it's non-communicable diseases, or NCDs, with heart disease being the number one cause of death, followed by diabetes, then followed by stroke, and cancer rounding up the top 4 causes of death in the country. Here's the present Minister of Health outlining the dilemma that he faces managing the healthcare system of a sick population.
Since assuming the role of minister, I have never, ever been introduced correctly. My name is correct, Terence Dial Singh, the honorable, temporarily I will hold that. I am a minister, I am from Trinidad, but I am not the Minister of Health. Because what I have found is that I am the Minister of Health Care. Trinidad and Tobago has spent $40 billion in health care from 2005 to 2016. But are we healthier? The answer is no, and that's where I put my foot in my mouth. I am the Minister of Health Care. I am the Minister of providing scalpels to amputate legs. I am the Minister of providing anti-diabetic drugs, health care. I am the Minister of providing statins, free health care. I am the Minister of providing methyl dopa, health care. I am the Minister of providing anti-cancer drugs to combat lung cancer due to lifestyle diseases, health care. That is what I am. I am not the Minister of Health. So in spending $40 billion from 2005 to 2016, and we have Professor Carl Theodore here, Professor in Health Economics, who could tell you that all of that money has been wasted.
Mr. Andrew Danu, President of the Diabetes Association of Trinidad and Tobago, labeled Trinidad and Tobago a sick nation in 2019. In 2021, with the COVID-19 pandemic taking its toll on the day-to-day happenings of the country, Mr. Danu had this to say about the local COVID-19 death toll. He said that the local COVID-19 death toll could have been much lower if we were a healthier society. Due to the fact that most COVID-19 deaths in Trinidad and Tobago have been individuals who have comorbidities, mainly diabetes and high blood pressure, the COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted the epidemic of Ncds already raging in the country. This has been corroborated by the Chief Medical Officer of Trinidad and Tobago.
This morning prior, and just for the listening and public and the viewing public, Trinidad and Tobago does not have the highest death rate in terms of case fatality rate in the world. It spans all the way from countries that have very low death rates, 0.1%, all the way up to 14, 15 and beyond. There are some countries that have death rates in the 20s. Again, and we discussed this at the Prime Minister's conference on Saturday, it depends on the people that are being infected. We look at the profile that we have in Trinidad and Tobago in terms of the epidemiological profile of the people that are being infected. We have a very high prevalence rate of diabetes. Dr. Hines has said that we have seen a large proportion of the people over 60 being infected. 85% of our deaths have occurred in people over the age of 50. Those under 50 that have succumbed to the illness have also been, to the most part, with a few exceptions, had comorbidities of some type, diabetes, asthma, or some other illness. So it depends on who is being infected. Trinidad would have had a death rate of about 1.7 in phase 2 and continuing into the early parts of phase 3. In the recent past, it has gone up to 2.75, which is similar to the UK, similar to other countries around the world. It matters who is infected. So if the 33,000 people that were infected so far belong to a group of people 20 to 40 years of age without comorbidities, our death rate would have been much lower.
So the next question arises. Why are we having such a high burden of NCDs? I'll let Dr. Rohit Doon answer that question.
What are the factors that influence this epidemic that we have, and we'll refer to this as an epidemic also? Epidemics, we do have epidemics in chronic disease, not only infectious diseases. And everyone knows what are the risk factors. We've been speaking about it multiple times over time: unhealthy diets, sedentary lifestyle, high levels of inactivity, alcohol and tobacco. So in other words, just like infectious diseases, I like to think of diabetes as a hand-to-mouth disease because of the very nature of the behavioral risk factors. So over time, we grew up in the 60s in environment of a dietary environment of local fruits and vegetables, starchy roots, particularly blue food. We all understand the healthiest of all starches. And we moved towards an energy-dense diet, high in processed foods and beverages, animal source food, added sugars, fats, and salt. So you see, we've changed the way we live, and we have now been operating in an obesogenic environment because some of the biological risk factors, and by the way, it's a serious risk factor for COVID and its complication is overweight and obesity. They share similar risk factors. So diabetes, also overweight and obesity, is a serious risk factor, very, very important risk factor, and which is driven really by the obesogenic environment, the unhealthy diets and habits and behaviors, and high cholesterol, and high blood pressure. Those are some of the risk factors there.
Corroborating what Dr. Doon said, Mr. Danu blames the problem on the ready availability of unhealthy foods and lack of exercise. He is quoted in the September 11, 2021 edition of the Sunday Express. We simply have too many cheap, convenient, high-calorie foods available to us, and not enough opportunities to expend this excess energy we consume. These items have also become so convenient. You can stand in any street, in any city or town in Trinidad and Tobago, spin around, and you are guaranteed to see at least one fast food restaurant. We now have an obesogenic environment, giving rise to increasing waistlines and the Ncds which develop because of it. So, Dr. Clapper, can you put all what was discussed in a nutshell?
If I could deliver one message to the researchers who are looking for the cause of diabetes and the cause of clogged arteries and the cause of high blood pressure and the cause of obesity, I would tell them the answer is in 3 words. It's the food.
Exactly. It's the food. All the chicken, duck, goat, cow, wild meat, doubles, roti, sahina, corned beef, cakes, cookies, soft drinks, juices, and other processed foods that we are eating and drinking on a daily basis. That is what is making us sick. And yet, these are the foods that the Minister of Finance want to remove value-added tax from. Let's recall some of the basic food items that the Minister wants to remove VAT from.
Biscuits, cooking oil, canned vegetables, cornflakes, canned fish, canned meat, curry, juice, sausages, ham, ketchup, bottled water, and pigtail.
So it seems like the only items that the Minister wants to zero rate that are beneficial to health are canned vegetables, bottled water, and curry. Aside from those 3, every single item on that list contains substances that are damaging to human health and contribute to Ncds. These substances include trans fats, hydrogenated fats, animal protein, cholesterol, processed oils, salt, sugar, and refined carbohydrates. I have discussed ad nauseum the role of animal products in Ncds, especially breast cancer, diabetes, and kidney disease, all of which, by the way, are epidemics in Trinidad and Tobago. Check out these videos for more information. Links will be in the description box below. So now, the job of the Minister of Health just got a lot harder, because now the population has greater access to these foods that are detrimental to health because of the tax removal. In other words, we now have better access to poison.
We're poisoning ourselves with highly processed, nutrient-depleted foods.
And due to the tax removal, we now have a smaller income stream going into the treasury that could have been used to buy scalpels or anti-cancer drugs or to maintain the dialysis machines. Double whammy, if you ask me. So what are the foods that we as a population should be eating in order for us not to get sick and to maintain our health? To find out the foods that we should be really eating, let's hear from Professor Fitzroy Henry. Professor Henry is a professor of public health nutrition in the University of Technology in Jamaica. He has also worked in the Caribbean Food and Nutrition Institute for over 18 years. So he carries a wealth of knowledge and experience in the field of nutrition, especially from a Caribbean perspective.
We've come to understand that our food is the remedy to tackling the two issues of food security and NCDs. But what type of food should we be eating to combat these NCDs?
That's a big one. That's a whole module in my class. But nevertheless, let me start by saying what the book does. The book actually tells us the kinds of foods. Let me just say simply, we need more plant-based foods. Okay, we need more to consume, to grow, to have available, have accessible, and consume more plant-based foods. What we have done in the book, we have been able to show that and identify the foods that are high in fiber, high in vitamin A, vitamin C, high in iron, low in sodium, low in cholesterol, low in saturated fats, because these are the foods that will tackle the chronic diseases. The point I'm making there is that when we highlight those foods, we know that what I was talking about, the highs in those and the lows in those, directly relate to chronic diseases, NCDs. And that is what the book is about. And you can look across the different foods and you can see which ones has the highest amounts of this and that. And the reason is because, like vitamin A and C, they are very good antioxidants. They're very good anti-diabetic. They're very good anti-inflammatory foods that can be consumed. And that's why we're highlighting it. Some of them, evidence is growing that they stifle cancer cell growth, and they can reduce blood pressure and so on. So that's the beauty of the book. And it's written in a very simple, easy to understand way. And it really shows the link. And what we're talking about breadfruit, we're talking about soursop, we're talking about, dasheen, we're talking about, the
our food.
All right, sweet potato. And the great advantage of these foods is that they're already here with us. We develop our delicious traditional meals with them, and we don't recognize the value that they have in combating the chronic diseases.
Professor Henry, thank you. That's the supposed prevention that Mr. Imbert had just mentioned in his budget statement.
Madam Speaker, prevention is better than cure.
If the whole of Trinidad and Tobago makes the switch to eating more plant-based foods, whole plant-based foods, the country will be better off and will be healthier because of it. But in my opinion, don't expect the government to be the driving force behind this. To explain further, enter the present Minister of Agriculture, Mr. Clarence Rambarat. In the 2020 Trinidad and Tobago general election campaign, Mr. Rambarat took the podium in the Chaguanas East constituency, addressing party supporters, where he made some interesting remarks about agriculture and its relationship with health.
It is tied to the fourth element of agriculture, because I also said as minister that agriculture and health live together. Because food is not just because you're hungry, Food is because it fuels your body. And the fresher the food and the more appropriate the food for consumption, the less we'll be spending on health. So the case for agriculture and farming is not just a case for food. It is a case for the ever-rising cost of keeping the unhealthy in this country alive. and by the farmers being able to sell in the Namdevco Farmers Market, we are putting fresher, cheaper, healthier produce in the hands of the average consumer of this country. It was not rocket science, We didn't do anything fancy. It started with a decision to put a farmers market in the Queen's Park Savannah. And it moved to a decision, because I always say as Minister of Agriculture, I want to pull the blinds in the office and see farmers and farms. And that is why the Honorable Prime Minister moved the head office of the ministry to Chaguanas. And that is why we put a farmers market on the compound of the ministry. And we've kept expanding farmers market, Promenade, San Fernando, Rio Claro, Santa Cruz, Arima. We've expanded them because we understand that if we deal with land tenure and the farmers are producing more, if they could sell directly to the consumers, they benefit from a higher price, but we benefit from healthier produce that is more affordable, and if we consume it and we consume it right, we'd reduce the burden on the health sector. It's not rocket science, and you don't need to bring back the sugar industry to do that. The fourth area, I've already said, COVID taught us something very important, very, very important, that while I will always say in dealing with the food import bill, we must have an element of imported food on our plates. This country cannot sensibly be self-sufficient in rice. This country will not be self-sufficient in flour. We would not produce enough oil, cooking oil. But we, by making the appropriate healthy choices, would rely less on imported food if we adjust what is on our plate.
Now, every single thing he said in that clip was on the money. But then, he says this.
We've seen our local poultry industry. And when I talk about eating local and eating chicken that is produced here, it is not simple talk, Our local poultry industry is self-sufficient. Trinidad produces all its needs in relation to chicken. We're doing that also in relation to table eggs. We're doing that in relation to duck. But it's something we have to protect in the way every other country protects its local industries. And over a period of time, chicken is not simple. There are 12,000 jobs in that industry. There are contract farmers throughout rural Trinidad and Tobago. The most contract farmers in chicken in the country come from the constituency of Mayaro, mainly the Bish area. And when you go on a poultry farm, you find out that if women in this country are involved in business, well, the poultry industry is where a lot of women are involved in the rural communities. And the 12,000 jobs created by the chicken processors in this country, many of those jobs are held by women. Many of those women, single mothers, and many of those single mothers on the east-west corridor in this country. So them who launch, when my opponents launch something to grab the corridor politically, I never hear them talk about the simple bird, the bird. But that corridor, and those rural women across the country need local chicken in order to survive. It's that simple. But you will never know if out of 18 elected MPs, 17 of them don't even live in their constituencies on the other side. 17 of them. If they don't live there, and if they don't go nowhere in Trinidad, if they go nowhere, and if when they go, they ride in high on music trucks, they wouldn't know. They wouldn't know how this simple fowl powers families across the country. So when I told the country if I had to eat outside, because everybody know I don't eat out so. If I have to eat outside, I will take my KFC and Royal Castle because they buy locally produced chicken. They buy it every day. And when they do that, they support all those women I just described to you. And you will never believe that unless you go on the farms as I have gone as minister.
Ironic. On one hand, he talks about the supposed relationship between agriculture and health. Yet, he talks about protecting the poultry industry. This is because the poultry industry is self-sufficient. It provides jobs to many farmers, contractors, and citizens of the country, almost 30,000 people in total. And it supplies at least 2 major fast food establishments in the country. Never mind that poultry has been implicated in almost all of the Ncds, from heart disease, diabetes, kidney disease, cancer, and everything else in between. Might I add common complaints such as fibroids and endometriosis. These are the same chronic diseases that Mr. Dialsing says makes him the Minister of Healthcare and drains the national treasury of over $6 billion in a year.
Madam Speaker, Ncds is one of the most critical elements facing this country. And our health budget went up from $3.08 billion in 2008 to $6.0 billion in 2019. That is unsustainable. We have to tackle NCDs.
And it's the same local poultry industry that is supplying chicken to the same fast food establishments that plays a major role in the obesogenic environment that Mr. Danu and Dr. Doon talked about. Now tell me.
Not making any sense?
But don't expect this or any government to touch that, because that is what is bringing in the money, and that's what's giving them the political leverage. They may say all the right things and preach it up with flowery language, but at the end of the day, money talks. And it's the same ploy at play here. The government wants to give people the illusion of saving money on so-called basic food items. But don't be fooled. As the United States is learning and witnessing right now, the mirage of savings from cheap foods that goes into the health institutions. So, question of the day. If you're from Trinidad and Tobago, what were your thoughts on the 2022 budget? Put your comments in the comment section below and feel free to offer any other feedback. It will be very interesting to know your thoughts, especially on this. If you got value out of this video, give it a reaction and pass the message along. It may help somebody out there along the way. All reference items for this video will be in the description box below. In my next video, I will give the final installment of the benefits of a plant-based diet in the prevention and mitigation of breast cancer. So, till next time, be safe and be well. And remember, health and strength are more about choices and less about chances.